We live in a society!
The game has been rigged. Forget all the rules. Stop believing what you're told. All this hate that I feel for you, my one true enemy. Once was blind, but now I see. It makes me question why.
You know, prior to the release of Cyberpunk 2077, I had no interest in this. Like, at all. I gotta be honest, like, I legit didn't care. I know there was huge hype behind it. I know people were upset about the constant delays and things like that. But I just didn't have any interest. I hadn't experienced anything Cyberpunk prior to this game. So it wasn't even the kind of mystique that I would normally go for. And then a friend of mine bought it for me. And it's a gift, so of course I'm gonna try it. And, you know, it's a nice thing to do. And then I wound up loving it. And then I got in trouble for loving it. Because this is the internet, and you're not allowed to like anything here, ever. Especially when the internet has decided it's terrible. Okay? Do you have an opinion on the internet? How dare you? Now, to be fair, the game's initial launch was questionable. When it was released back in 2020, recognize for a moment that I played the PC version of the game, which was a lot more stable and still is. But if you played the PS4 or Xbox One versions, ooh, you had a bad time, didn't you? It's pretty clear, based off of the results, that the game really just couldn't be handled by those consoles. I hear the PS5 and Xbox One X, or whatever they're calling the new Xbox, I don't even keep track anymore, are better in terms of this problem, because the game was just hilariously buggy. And not even buggy in a game-breaking way, I feel. Like, it buggy in just a laughability factor. Like, you'd get people doing the weirdest stuff sometimes. It was just one of those things. I never really ran into anything that really hindered me, but again, I was on the PC version. And to be honest, when it comes to any kind of open world experience with a massive thing, you know, where there's, you know, a non-linear style and you can basically do whatever you want, I'm a little more forgiving on the glitch front, personally, just because of the context here. Because a lot of you are probably pointing out that I was pretty hard on something like Sonic 06 for all its bugs. And yeah, I was. But Sonic 06 recycled levels. Okay? The depth of Sonic 06's content was minimal at best. Cyberpunk is not like that at all. It has a huge world to explore with a whole bunch of different environments and different set pieces. And with that kind of expanse, you're gonna have to expect that there might be some nagging issues. And the game has done nothing but get better since its initial launch. It's been updated many times, though I still probably wouldn't recommend the Xbox One version or the PS4 version. I would say the next-gen version, whether it's on PC or on PS5, Xbox One X, is probably the way to go at this point, just because I legitimately don't believe this game should have ever been on the pre-gen consoles at all, simply because of stability concerns. And I get people were upset, of course. People should point out that there's flaws, but to throw the whole game in the trash when I could think of plenty of other open world games that have done the exact same thing, like Skyrim, which is still heralded as like the greatest open world game ever by people. You know, when that game launched, I remember the dragons flying backwards. I mean, there were a lot of problems in Skyrim when it was first launched. And people pointed out to me that, yeah, but people called that out too. I'm not saying don't call it out. Of course call it out. If there's a problem with a game, yeah, of course you can say something. But people act like the game was terrible and could never be any better. Look, we live in a modern age where patches are a thing. You can fix technical issues. That is a thing that can be done. again, back to my Sonic 06 example, many of the glitches that game has are still there. They were never patched out, even though that generation of consoles was the generation to introduce updating games so you could actually patch out these kind of technical problems, but they never did that. CD Projekt Red has done nothing but improve 2077 since the launch, so I give them credit for not abandoning the title and continuing to try to make this a thing, because frankly, again, I actually adore it. Let's be honest here, Cyberpunk is basically edgy sci-fi. That's what it is. I mean, I guess it's a bit more complicated than that, but at the end of the day, what else would you call it outside of Cyberpunk? Edge runner. You know, you call it that too, I suppose, but eh. My point is that this kind of game is actually right in line with my interests, which is weird to say because you'd think I would have known this well sooner, but I didn't. I never experienced Blade Runner prior to this game. I have now. I've experienced a lot of Cyberpunk things since this game. Yeah. The game's actually based off of a tabletop RPG, and a big part of the Cyberpunk mystique is, of course, the, shall we say, oppressive nature of society. There's a lot of social commentary here about the potential future of humanity. In a world where there is a government, but things are controlled more by these mega corporations that have basically their own private militaries that can do whatever they want because they have so much money they can effectively pay anybody else. Many of them are doing human experiments in order to achieve the next big thing, because of course they keep having to produce products, but since this is a role-playing game, you do have some choice regarding your character's origins. You can start out as a corpo, a street kid, or a nomad. Each one of these decisions does slightly change how the game plays out. The beginning is totally different each time, and it also gives you some different dialogue options based off of your character's own unique background. It's not dissimilar from the way Dragon Age Origins did it, although Origins did have more options in this regard. The fact that there are any options at all is always a nice thing for me, because I just don't think a lot of games give you different origin options. Most of these RPGs, like, yeah, you can change the main character's appearance and stuff, but the origin's almost always the same, it's locked in. Here, though, you do have some choice. And of course, as a character creator, regardless of whatever gender you go with, your character's name is always V. V being your first initial. Everyone just calls you that, because V is edgy, I guess, I don't know. In your quest to make money and live on the edge, as a cyberpunk edge runner, whatever you want to call yourself, you wind up with Keanu Reeves in your head. Okay, it's not really Keanu Reeves, well, it is really Keanu Reeves, he's playing the character, but his name is Johnny Silverhand, who was a character from the tabletop RPG. And you have to figure out how to get him out of your head before he takes over your body, basically. That's the overarching plot, but there's a whole bunch of different micro-plots within the game, which is, again, something I really like about these kinds of RPGs in general, that there's a lot of different stories to experience, and you can handle them in any real order that you want, whether you want to do all the side jobs or you want to focus on the main story. It's totally up to you. There's different cars to get, and of course it's a fast travel system, which the map is pretty big, and the vast majority of the stories can end pretty differently based off of your own unique action. Even down to actually how you handle the missions. You want to go stealthy? You can. You want to go loud? You certainly can. It's a matter of personal choice. I usually prefer to go silent, that's just my style. But, of course, there are situations when going in with a machine gun blazing might be the better course of action, or the one I prefer to do. The point is the game lets you do either or. And that's what I like about it, player choice. You can choose to play the game how you want. It reminds me of Deus Ex in that regard, which, you know, now that I think about it, I did experience Cyberpunk prior to this. It was Deus Ex. Deus Ex is Cyberpunk, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Similar concept, not different universe, different ideals, different ideas, I guess, but it's still cyberpunk, I would say. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I got sidetracked, I apologize. Anyway, you're probably wondering how you level up. Well, of course, there's a skill tree involved in this game, because, duh, it's an RPG, and you can basically maximize your various stats in your own unique way based on your playstyle. Different things give you different boosts, and having high enough points in certain areas will actually give you different dialogue options or different options for things you can do, ways to progress in certain missions. There are many missions where, for example, there's a door that can be only opened with a high technical skill. If you can't open it, you have to go the long way around. But it can make the game easier if that technical skill is high enough, because then you can open that door and go through the easy way. It just varies depending on your V's own unique characteristics and how you chose to lay out their growth in terms of levels. There's also, of course, a ton of different guns to get, because duh, of course there are. It's set up in a way where guns basically go higher in level as the game progresses, so you're gonna wind up just kind of replacing guns. You can break them down, and there is a crafting system, though I admit I have no interest in a crafting system generally when it comes to games. I usually don't bother with it. But it is there, it is an option, and it is something you can do, though generally you can get through the game with just picking up enemy weapons and replacing them when they're better than yours and things like that. There are also add-ons to make the weapons a little bit better in certain ways. And then there's the cyberware, which is probably the big difference between Cyberpunk and most other RPGs. See, you know, you have clothes that add certain amounts of armor too, like a typical RPG, but you also have cyberware. Cyberware is basically, well, honestly, pretty much everyone in this world, in this dystopian future, has some amount of cyberware in them. It's actually pretty rare for someone not to, which effectively means that pretty much everyone is some level of cyborg, though many are more decked out than others. And the cyberware can give you all sorts of different weird abilities that normal humans would not be able to have, like the ability to double jump, or even weapons inside your arms, or just making your arms straight up stronger so you can punch someone's head off or something. There's even minor things that can change how your eyes work. The point is there's actually a lot of different options and ways to deck yourself out that can make combat a lot more unique than you might be thinking it is. It isn't just a first-person shooter in this regard. Yeah, it can be played that way, but you can give yourself all sorts of different abilities that can completely change the scope of battle and how you're perceived. Visually, the game is, of course, stunning. In fact, my computer's 10 years old, and I concede I had to lower the settings in order to play this at all, and I had to lower them even more just to record it, because the second I turned my recording software on, the frame rate dipped like crazy. If you notice any frame skips, just so you know, that's not the game. When played without recording on my computer, it's actually smooth as silk. When I started recording, I started getting some hiccups here and there, so please don't blame the game for that. That's me and my old computer. I'm sorry, she's doing her best, don't yell at her. And the music is just top tier. I adore the soundtrack of Cyberpunk. The story is interesting, but very depressing, and I think that's one thing that has turned a lot of people off, because I just don't think some people are getting this. Because the thing about Cyberpunk as a medium, usually, is that this is a dystopian, humanity is already kind of screwed situation. There usually aren't any happy endings in a cyberpunk setting. It's possible to do, but generally not really. There's always some level of bittersweet, at best, in a cyberpunk situation, and the process of getting to that usually involves a lot of heartbreak and depression and horrible things that happen, because this is what society has become. And in this regard, I think a lot of people have gotten turned off to the story, which is very well written, but because of the very idea of how Cyberpunk is supposed to work in terms of the theme, people have been like, well, I want a happy ending. Then go play Final Fantasy, okay? Get out of here. This is where the edgelords go to cry, alright? This is where we go to feel something, to feel some emotion, what little we have left after we've had it stripped away by this society. But in all seriousness, the game is actually really good. It's actually one of my favorite games. Legitimately, I mean that. I really did enjoy everything about it, and I really continue enjoying it to this day. Like I said, they've done nothing but fix most of the problems, so if you still haven't given this game a shot after this long, it's probably worth trying now. You know, I admit the launch was rough. Really rough. I totally conceded that. But it's gotten better, and it's worth giving a try. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.
The game has been rigged. Forget all the rules. Stop believing